We strike up a conversation with another couple. They're from England, Lawrence and Catherine. Lawrence tells me to call him Larry. Catherine stays a Catherine. We're enchanted by their accents and Larry's stories. He's traveled all over the world, China, Russia, Australia, everywhere. I listen to him talk and watch him blister in the sun. Poor, pale Larry. Someone should save this remnant of the empire before it burns to a crisp. As we sit here, he turns bright red. I call him Lobster Larry. He thinks that's funny. I get up and fetch him a beer. It won't help his skin, but it's something I can do. He's been with the company ever since we were bought by the Brits, about 15 years. I can tell Larry is a very heavy hitter. He's landed some tremendous fish. I deal with big companies, the biggest, but Larry's been dancing with governments, and they are the real plums. Businesses pinch pennies, even when they're spending millions. Governments throw millions around like it was garden mulch. The boys who work for the resort set up everything on our little island. Chairs, tables, the food and drinks. They sailed out here ahead of us with a generator to make sure the beer would be cold by the time we arrived. Sure, I've been here before, but I just can't get over it. Even Larry, who's been everywhere, says, "This is the life, ain't it?" The way he says it, with his elegant accent, and using the word ain't, slumming, it makes us all laugh in agreement. It sure is. Larry starts talking about the war, which I think is not exactly the topic I would have chosen for this place and this moment. I feel very badly about the war. I believed much of what I heard, and I thought hundreds of thousands of people would die, including thousands of Americans, the sons of people I knew, and maybe me, and one day my son. I believe that talk about a conflict with biblical roots, men fighting a holy war to the death, a jihad. The night the bombing started, my hands and legs were actually shaking. I could not pull myself away from the TV set. Then the missiles hit Israel, and there were reporters trying to talk through gas masks, and it looked like the beginning of the end of the world. It wasn't. Even so, my wife and our daughter went to Washington to march for peace. My wife is a very religious person and has always been socially active. I share her concerns to some degree, to a lesser degree, I'll admit, but I've also been too busy working to march, picket, or protest. Honestly, I probably wouldn't do it if I had the time. I tend to see both sides of the issue, while she does not. To her, it's always clear who the bad guys are. I understood the situation with Iraq was complicated, and though I was confused about it, I basically supported our government's decision to initiate the hostilities. It seemed like we'd given them fair warning, and they'd started the aggression. And once the fighting began, I felt it was my duty to support the troops, even though I was appalled at the way I saw patriotism being used. My wife was adamantly opposed to any use of force. She says there always must be another way, or we are doomed. And even now with the war over, I worry about things, like the people there who will hate us forever, the burning oil fields, and the slick in the Gulf. Most people feel that was a decisive victory, that it's over, and we did the right thing. My wife remains opposed to war. I'm still confused. I feel like I know what happened, and yet I don't. I really don't know why it happened. I'm not sure about the results. So I'm cringing when Larry is talking about it, thinking it will rile my wife. But he's not exactly talking about the war itself. He's talking about his business and how Iraq was one of his best customers before the war. They had tons of cash, and they bought computers, like gumdrops, he says. Larry says he did hundreds of millions of dollars of business with them. He says, you know those pictures on the telly with what you Yanks call the command and control centers, and how the top of the building would be in the crosshairs, and then one of those bloody smart bombs of yours would go straight down an air duct and blow up the installation? I told him I had seen those pictures many times. Those were our mainframes in there, old boy, he said, howling with laughter, his voice sounding suddenly much too loud and out of place in our paradise. All of those installations, every one of them, that was us. All of them blown up. Hardware, software, all of it. Boom! He keeps laughing, and I see what he is getting at. Resupply. All of those computers will need to be replaced, no matter what happens, no matter who seizes control. After the water and power are restored, someday they'll need the computers. I feel a surge of nausea. My head was spinning. I felt like I did when I was a kid and I got on a tilt-a-whirl at the carnival. Larry was laughing, Lobster Larry, and I knew he expected me to reply, and I did. I lowered my bottle of cold, imported beer, and I looked at Larry as a brother in arms, gave him that confidential grin, and I said, "Wow, son of a gun, that's really something, Larry." And it's true. It really is something. It's why we're here. A whole new market had just opened up.